Good afternoon. My name is David Goodtree. I am from Massachusetts, although I will use the shorthand Boston because I think that's how many Israelis think of us. That's our capital city. I am a full-timer on the subject of the Boston-Israel relationship. I'm a founding board member of Mass Challenge Israel. I'm a board member and partner with the venture capital firm in Israel, OurCrowd. $325 million assets under management, invested in a total of about 100 companies, including 80 Israeli companies. And I serve on the boards of other Israeli and Boston Israeli businesses and entities, including the New England Israel Business Council, which is the lead organizer for the governor's delegation. And so that's what brings us here today and to this conference, the U.S.-Israel Growth Summit. And you can hear from people like Dave, the president of the Raytheon IIS Cybersecurity Division, that Boston is kind of a big town that's quiet, right? We're not a town that makes apps. That's not us. We're algorithms and molecules. We're like Tel Aviv University. We're like Technion. We're like some of the great companies that are here that have expanded globally and succeeded, including the first ever Israeli successful tech company. If you're probably over 30 or 35, you might remember Cytex. It came to Boston. It didn't go anywhere else. So we have the kind of the longest relationship, including 30,000 Israelis who live in Boston and a nonstop flight. So we didn't call this the Massachusetts Israel Growth Summit, as if anybody could even spell that. It's the U.S.-Israel Growth Summit, and actually what I would say is the Israel Global Growth Summit in partnership with its friends in Boston, Massachusetts. I'd like you to look at this picture a little closely. It looks like a city with a body of water. It's not. It's two cities and two bodies of water stitched together. It's Boston and Tel Aviv and the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean. And if you just took a boat straight west from the port of Tel Aviv, you'd get to Boston, straight line to Boston. And it was actually Avi Hasson who said to us, you know, in Israel everybody's connected. We don't need LinkedIn. What's that for? In the United States, you're all not connected. And so you need LinkedIn. We want to be 1 degree of separation with you, is what he said. And that's what this picture describes. So in Boston, in Massachusetts, we understand how important that relationship is to us and our economy. And so I'd like to share with you a video now, a 60-second video, which describes how important that relationship is to us. So it's very important to us, the relationship with Israel. You know, the question is, though, what do Israeli startups need to know about U.S. and global markets? What can members of our delegation explain that to you, including some of the most successful Israeli entrepreneurs? Israeli CEOs and startups founders wrestle with the question of where to establish a U.S. base of operations. Now, I recognize in the various roles I've had with Mass Challenge and OurCrowd, if you ask an Israeli who doesn't yet have much experience with the United States, maybe has visited New York or Disney World or something, or has family, when you're ready to expand, where you're going to go? Answers number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley. Because its name is synonymous with innovation and all that buzz and all that money and all that froth. Yep, I got it. And then like number 9 is New York. I was born in New York. I was raised in New York. And then number 10, they'll say, well, I don't know, Boston, Cleveland, something like that. So that's what we hear all the time. But the reality is quite different of what happens. Now, you saw numbers there, 200 Israeli-founded companies. That is the only study that's ever been done in the entire United States about the relationship in numbers between Boston and Israel. And other places like New York and Silicon Valley will make up stuff. They'll make up numbers. They're like, oh, if they're 200, we must be 400 or 600. And these are real numbers because we measure things. We instrument things. So there are many very important variables to consider. We have today 4 super successful CEOs in cybersecurity and digital health who will tell us how they went through their decision-making process, what factors are important, and what their experience has led them to do. But before I go there, I'd like to ask 4 audience questions. First of all, Israelis who live in Israel, just raise your hands. I want to understand what that room looks like. Great, thank you. For those of you who just raised your hands, have you visited Boston for work purposes for more than 1 day in the past 2 years? 10%. Do you work with a company today that expects to establish a new base of operations in the US, anywhere, sometime in this next year or the following year? 50%. Those of you 50% who just raised your hand, is Boston a place you're thinking about? Be honest. 10% of the 50%. By the end of this, if I am successful, so we will take some questions soon, but I'd like to call up the CEOs while I talk about your bios, the four gentlemen, please. Avner Halperin, the CEO of EarlySense, a medical technology and digital health company offering, you can all just come up now, contact-free monitoring and analytics, MIT MBA, Tel Aviv University Masters in Physics, Hebrew University Bachelor's in Physics, Talpiot alumnus, R&D unit head in IDF intelligence, and this company has $100 million in venture capital backing, and they are basically headquartered in Israel and Greater Boston. Lior Div, the CEO of Cybereason, 8200 alumnus, Medal of Honor recipient, 2016 CEO of the Year by the Info Security Guide, $87 million in venture capital funding, headquartered in the United States and Boston. Udi Mokady, CEO of CyberArk, $1.6 billion market cap this morning, I checked. 2,500 customers, including 50 of the Fortune 1000. The company protects privileged access management, named Top Place to Work by the Boston Globe. Udi is an Entrepreneur of the Year, named by Ernst & Young, bachelor's from Boston University, law degree of Hebrew University, and a veteran of IDF intelligence. Dr. Ido Schoenberg, Chairman and CEO of American Well, serial entrepreneur with multiple successful exits, doctorate from Tel Aviv University, top U.S. telehealth company, $200 million in funding. I think you've got some people up here who have experience to share that they can learn from. And I'm going to move over. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. So we have limited time, so I'm going to ask for short answers. And how about maybe 1-word, 2-word, 3-word answers to these questions? How long have you been in Boston?
I've been mainly on a plane, really. But we started our office in Boston in 2011.
3 years. More than I care. I think 2001.
One.
Same here.
Yeah. Did you consider any other place? And if so, where?
We had investors from Cleveland and research there, so we considered Cleveland as one opportunity.
We consulted with a lot of Israeli VCs that consulted us to go to the West Coast. And as you said, like 8 times.
Yeah.
It was a clear choice. I chose my wife in 2 minutes and Boston the minute after. It's a very natural place for a healthcare company.
We obviously considered the West Coast. We considered New York. And we at least selected Boston.
What are 1 or 2 things, you can just list, you don't have to go into it, just what kind of survey style, that you like most about the choice you made?
Well, for us, it was mainly the talent in Boston and the quality of the research. We want to convey that we are a research-based organization and connected to leading organizations made us very successful.
For us, it was the time differences between Israel and Boston to have the R&D here, and the talent base that exists in Boston. It was phenomenal for us to grow.
Talent, ecosystem, and lifestyle.
Talent, the hub for enterprise software talent, access to academia, and really the quality of personnel, also from a retention perspective.
So tell us a brief personal story about your Boston experience, something that might help people in the room make their decisions based upon what you have learned. Maybe something about time zone, talent, access to customers, access to capital, family issues. It's a very important subject for somebody traveling abroad and bringing family with them. Cultural issues, adjustments, any personal story. I know you each have many of them. Experiences, and who's up first? Thank you, Mike.
So for a young startup, one of the most important things is to get the first paying customer. You mentioned LinkedIn and degrees of separation. Finding the first customer, the first hospital that would bet on our technology was not easy. It turned out that there was a hospital called the Metro West Medical Center that actually had 1 degree of separation to an ex-Israeli who led that. Turns out now that I think to many, many of the leading institutions in Boston, you can get with 1 degree of separation. For us, that was very helpful. The other thing that helped us get that first site was the support of the governor at the time and the fact that he came to cut the ribbon. So I think as a lesson to people here, the access to almost everyone that matters in Boston in 1 link and the ability to get help from the government are the 2 most important things that were valuable for us.
So I was thinking about a business answer for it, but for a young startup, I think the most important thing is to make my wife happy. And I think that when you're moving with a family, it's not obvious to move with kids and everything, especially when in Israel there is a very tight community. And I believe that in Boston specifically, in specific towns in Boston, there is a very tight community of Israelis that can really make it as a second home. So I believe that that's super important. That was super important for us.
Can you just tell us the little story about when you arrived and your wife and the snow thing?
Oh, that's my family story.
Yeah.
So basically, we moved at the 1st of January 2014 with my wife and 2 kids. And I see that some people understand what does it mean. It was a very rough winter in terms of Boston point of view. And for the people that don't understand what does it means snow, and I need to stand in order to show it, this height. And I'm not like the governor, so for me it was like I was covered with snow. So basically I think that we didn't went out for 3 days after we arrived, and it was kind of a culture shock for us to understand the differences in something that is very simple, like winter. But I believe that over time we understand how to deal with it. So usually when I'm advise other people when they are moving to Boston, I'm saying, move with your kid, move with your family, but don't do it in winter time. Just do it in the summer.
Many stories, but one in particular. When my wife started and led IMD Soft, we went to the best hospital in the world, which is Mass General. And one of the many things I love about Boston is the readiness to accept big ideas. And we had a big idea. So we painted this idea that intensive care units needs to be automated and we can really save a lot of lives during the night and things of that nature. And to be honest, a lot of those ideas were not ready. So we did this amazing deck that showed the system that didn't really exist. And Mass General people were so excited that they basically invited us to implement it. And I remember that one nurse in the audience stood up and said, what if all this is mirror image, it's only a PowerPoint and it's not real? And everybody laughed. To be honest, she was right. And then they sent a delegation back here to Tel Aviv to actually see our system. And to be honest, it wasn't ready. So what we've done is, for 2 days, we are very lucky to have the best food around here in Tel Aviv. So people were wining and dining the team, and by the time they came to the company, everything was ready.
Great. So the governor said that one of the reasons we're here is for you to make friends. I think you need a friend before you cross the ocean and make your first embankment. When we founded CyberArk, the trend was definitely Silicon Valley, also for security companies. But we had a friend, and he's here in the crowd, and he was in the previous incarnation of the New England Israel Business Council. His name is Eyal Shavit. He visited us in a very modest first office that we had in Or Yehuda at the time, and he said, oh, if you're enterprise software, you must come to Boston. And so we went on this checkout visit, and we also did it in December, actually. But we immediately were met by similar people in the high-tech community who explained to us about the quality of the staff, why they love being there, why it's great for families, and it tipped us over. The second thing is a business issue. In cybersecurity, again, fortunately, CyberArk now sells to all verticals out there. But in the early years, the first early adopters of information security and new technologies are typically the financial services companies, where they equate security to money. There's no question that they want to put more security in place. And so when we introduced a new layer of security, the first adopters were banks, also here in Israel. So to cross the ocean and go after the finance sector, it leaves you New York or Boston. And between the two, the family reason is to go to Boston. Absolutely.
Wow. Lior, can you talk a little bit about the talent topic? I think actually maybe each of you have a certain perspective on the talent topic in terms of where do you find them, or you mentioned the subject kind of about loyalty and relationship with universities, and you checked out, I remember when we did that thing in June, and you talked about kind of, I was looking for people, and where do you find them, and where is their talent, and how much do you pay them? So anybody want to talk about the talent topic, and how important is that? Because usually startup CEOs are like, I'm going to go where the first VC is who funds me, or I'm going to go where the first customer is. But if you're looking down the road, you're thinking, I'm going to be $1 billion company. Everybody thinks that. What's the most important thing to think about when you're making the choice now relative to what's important later?
I think that usually startups are trying to, and probably the rest of the crew and Udi specifically can relate to that. You're thinking very tactically. You're not thinking as strategically. You're thinking where you're getting your next round of fund, and where you can find your first customer, and it's very critical. But there is a what if I will manage to pull it off and it will be a successful business, then when can I grow and add more people? And just to give you an example, in the past year we tripled the amount of people that we have in our company, from 60 to 220. And in Boston specifically, we were like less than 20 people in Boston, and now we have more than 100. So in order to recruit so many people in a so short manner of time, this is almost impossible if the talent pool out there is not so good, or it's available, or is understand and have the capacity to deal with a thing like cybersecurity. I don't think that in any other place in the US we could hire so fast and the quality of people. And it's not just the
I'm sorry, could you repeat that sentence?
No, I'm getting paid. No, and now seriously, it's like the amount of people that we managed to hire in a much short amount of time, this is something that for us was critical for the successful of our business. And I'm pretty sure that the rest of the guys here can relate to that.
Yeah, well, talent is almost 100% of the success. It's super important. And you can't pay great people enough. So this race is probably very hard to compete with. It's all about the mission, the feeling, and get people excited about what you do. And it's important to understand that great people also relate not only to the company itself, but also to its surroundings. So the school system, the lifestyle in the state, the opportunity to have other jobs after this job are part of the considerations. When you have 3 kids at school and you leave one company, you usually stay at the same place. And that's why Massachusetts is so important. You need to have this, to compete on the same finite pool of people and make sure that they are as excited as they can be. And that worked really well for us. It's not only true for local talent, it's also true for Israeli talent. The fact that we have a great Jewish community, a great Israeli community, the fact that we have a direct flight courtesy of Governor Patrick before, and now Governor Baker is continuing to support that, are also very important things. The area code, the fact that you can talk to Israel with your parents when it's not too late at night, which you can't really do when you work at Silicon Valley, are all major, important, real decision-making items you should consider when you're considering your next home.
So I mentioned the retention earlier. I don't know if there are formal studies about it, but I know from talking to fellow CEOs in Silicon Valley, their typical employee, they have an average of 8-month retention, 10-month retention, 18 months, and they just cross the street to Facebook or to the local cool tech startup. There are a lot of local cool tech startups in Boston, but there's a different mentality. To Ido's point, there's a mentality of building a career, building relationships, and a company is all about its people. So for us, we saw that we have great retention and great culture built in the Israel team, and we wanted to replicate that to Boston. By the way, one of the secrets is to have a nucleus of Israelis that move to Boston, and I think you all know that, so that you can retain your culture. But we really found that. On top of that, before we moved, companies like EMC, RSA, Akamai, and other technology companies really built up the talent pool for enterprise software in the region that we were able to leverage and contribute to. Surrounded by academia. I think we have in the room members from Harvard, from WPI, and from Wentworth College as examples of the top schools out there in Boston. At a certain point in CyberArk's phase, we really figured out that that's the opportunity. Hire college graduates and grow them within the company. Again, make them more professional and also high retention rates and a cultural fit.
Just to build on Udi's last point, I think for us and for many companies in earlier stages, connecting to leading experts. We work with the leading physician in our field from the Brigham, really a world leader. Not only the fact that he's a great thinker, but also that these clinical experts are open to cooperating with small companies and young Israeli startups is very valuable. And then some of these people actually ended up having people from their team jump on board and work for us. So that has been very valuable. So it's not just great academia, but great academia that's open to the businesses and to interacting with businesses and to helping businesses.
So I want to emphasize for a second that while we have these examples of outstanding, stellar, successful CEOs in both cybersecurity and digital health on the stage, the relationship, and I like how Governor Baker mentioned it, he said, home away from home for both geographies. EMC, which is headquartered in Boston and now Dell EMC, has 1,000 employees in Israel and has done 10 acquisitions of $4 billion of value. And then there's IBM Security, which has more enterprise cybersecurity revenue than any other company in the world. And it's not headquartered in New York, which is global headquarters for IBM. It's headquartered in Cambridge, Massachusetts, because that's where the talent is, and that's where the companies that they acquired were, including the biggest acquisition they made, Trusteer, who established Boston as its home away from home for an $800 billion acquisition. So Dell, EMC, Akamai, co-founded by an Israeli, has 125 employees here. Philips Healthcare. Actually, that division is not really headquartered in Netherlands. It's headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts. So whether it's digital health or cybersecurity, there is a free flow of ideas, talent, capital, and companies. So I'd like to move to audience questions. I'm actually going to take 3 and moderate them back to the panel. So, anything you would like to ask of our guests? You get me the chance to ask more then. Yes, in the back with the pink. Okay, it's not pink. It's a beautiful color. Stand up.
I recruit U.S. employees for Israeli companies. I always like to ask the question, I think I've asked out there in the past, but should the head of your U.S. operation be an Israeli? Should the head of your U.S. operation be an American from your field? You know, there's pros and cons for each. I'm curious what the other members of the team have done and what your opinion is on that issue.
Great subject. Let's do a second question because we have about 5 minutes, so we're going to merge them all together. Any other questions? Then you get all the answers.
Yeah, sure. First of all, for our experience, even before thinking about bringing that top leader, American leader, to manage part of the operations, for us, the most important thing was to bring very experienced and well-known board members to our company. And when they came on board, and then we could recruit actually leading American executives to work for us. And we actually brought a very experienced American president of the U.S. operations, who together with me leads that activity. I think one of you mentioned it's extremely important to move some of the Israeli team over to the U.S., but we cannot keep the Boston team too Israeli. So it's all about building the right mix, starting at the top at the board, and then at the executive level.
Anyone else?
Well, I think your head of operation needs to be a great person. It can be an Israeli, it can be an American. It doesn't really matter as long as it's a great person. At the same time, it's also very important not to typecast any job in any way. Some people believe that you need to find a U.S. head of operations in order to bridge the culture. And sometimes in this process, the DNA of the company is lost. The most important thing you need to do is to retain the DNA of the company. And the culture across the pond need to be consistent. And if you make the mistake of building an organization just to serve as an ambassador that is disconnected from the core of the company, in many cases you really lose a lot of the value that you created.
I absolutely agree with that. I think the win-win is actually to combine cultures, get the best of both worlds, definitely hire talented people in Boston when you move, but preserve that DNA. Again, doesn't have to be in a certain role, but having a representative of the founders or of the core team be part of opening up the Boston office.
Final word?
I agree with everybody here. In our case, we moved 2 founders to Boston and 1 founder stayed here. I believe that the founders have a critical role when it comes to startup. And as Udi mentioned, and Ido, the DNA of the company, you cannot lose it over time. You need to maintain it. And the rest is follow, meaning that it almost doesn't matter if it's American or Israeli. It's about the talent. It's about who is the person. And if he's a great person, that's great. And if not, it will be ruined.
So I would argue that the choice of your first major expansion location, which is probably the United States, is one of the most consequential choices you can make. If you're fortunate to be on a great runway and you'll have, let's say, multiple term sheets for a growth round, it's much less important, actually. It is important, but much less important, actually, which money, Obviously, VCs bring a lot more than money, and I'm in venture capital business. But I think the location that you pick and its importance for how you set that up and think about its long-term perspective and its relationship to your family and talent is one of the most important strategic decisions that you could make, and it should not be made lightly about, I went there, I visited, I made some choice, I went to Silicon Valley or some other place, Cleveland or any place else, and I had the first meeting, and okay, let's send the guy there, or I'll be the guy there. But that should be a lot of due diligence on the location. So I know that our delegation, and you saw people here from Fortune 1000 companies headquartered in Boston, GE, Raytheon, Akamai, companies that would be Fortune 1000 if they were not privately, like Harvard University, Eversource, top 50 energy company, big list of billions and billions of dollars of assets under management in our venture capital, stellar CEOs as examples. Hopefully we've made a good case. So I'd like to ask the question again. There were about 50% of you who said, I work for a company that is planning to expand into the United States in 2017 or 2018. And of that group, 50% of the room, 10% raised their hands and said, we're even thinking about Boston. So let me ask, those of you who are in companies that are thinking about planning to expand into the United States in 2017 or 2018, raise your hands if you would now think about Boston. Thank you, panelists. Lior, I'd ask you to stay behind if you would. Thank you very much. I understand, Lior, you have some news to share about a new development, new product in Cybereason.
Yeah, so usually we're not announcing any product in this type of crowd. It's more private to the company. In this case, we believe that it's influenced everybody. That's the reason that we choose this venue to present our new offering. I'm referring to the problem that we saw lately in the past year of ransomware. This is something that basically, if you're not familiar with the phenomena, it's hitting a lot of hospitals in the States. Criminals basically use software and Bitcoin and basically transform it over time to a new business model of basically take hospital as their hostages, encrypting all their files and asking them to pay a lot of money. We were kind of dealing with this problem in the past half a year, and eventually we decided that we want to make an end to this problem. And the only way that we found out to do that is first to create a software that can protect everybody against it. But the second thing that we decided is to make it free. And the reason that we decided to make it free is because we believe that right now ransomware, it's not a cybersecurity problem, it's actually a business model, meaning that if criminal, it's not going to be profitable for them to use ransomware, eventually over time they will stop. That's the reason that we developed this software. In a week it will become available to everybody, individuals and businesses. And basically we believe that as much as people will use this software, it will make end to this problem. And we will be able to fight back against those criminals that actually trying to make a profit in an illegal way. So thank you.
I'm excited. Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Lior. That's exciting. I'm going to try it. And Katie Stebbins is up.